Mom, why are we eating marked down hot dogs if Dad wired Aunt Susan $5,000 yesterday? My 7-year-old daughter, Lily, said it so casually, like she was asking why the sky was blue or why the dog needed a bath. She was sitting at the kitchen table, swinging her legs, poking at a hot dog with a plastic fork, and she had absolutely no idea that the question had just cracked my world right down the middle. I stood at the stove with a spatula in my hand, and I felt the blood drain from my face so fast I actually got dizzy. I grabbed the counter edge. The kitchen smelled like cheap processed meat and the faint chemical sweetness of the yellow mustard I'd squirted onto her bun. And for a second, I couldn't remember how to breathe. "Where did you hear that, baby?" I asked. My voice came out so steady it surprised me. 11 years of marriage will teach you how to keep your face neutral when your insides are free-falling. "I saw it on your phone," she said. "You left it on the counter when you went to get the ketchup. There was a notification. It said, 'Bank transfer confirmed, $5,000, Aunt Susan.'" She shrugged and took a bite of her hot dog. "Is Aunt Susan sick?" My hands were already moving. I set the spatula down on the stovetop, not in the pan, just on the burner grate, which I would normally never do because the handle would get hot. And I picked up my phone from the counter. I opened the banking app. I pressed my thumbprint and waited the 2 seconds for it to load. And there it was. Wire transfer. $5,000. Recipient: Susan M. Calloway. Completed yesterday at 2:47 p.m. The current balance in our joint checking account, $312.44. I kept my mouth shut for the children's sake. That's all I can tell you about the next 20 minutes. I finished making dinner. I put Lily's plate in front of her and called our son Tyler down from his room. I sat at the table and I watched my kids eat. And I smiled when Tyler told me about something funny that happened in gym class. And inside, I was completely, utterly still. Like a lake the second before a storm hits. But when my husband, Derek, came home from work, acting like it was just another ordinary Tuesday, kissing me on the cheek, ruffling Tyler's hair, asking what smelled good, he had absolutely no idea what was waiting for him. That's where the story really starts. Let me take you back about 2 years, because none of this will make sense unless you understand what our life looked like before. Derek and I met in our late 20s at a mutual friend's birthday party in Columbus, Ohio. He was funny and tall, and he had this way of listening to you that made you feel like the smartest person in the room. I was a second-grade teacher at the time. He was working his way up at a mid-sized logistics company called Trident Freight Solutions. We dated for 2 years, got married at a small venue outside of town with about 80 people, and moved into a 3-bedroom house in Westerville, a suburb north of Columbus where the HOA sends you passive-aggressive letters if your lawn gets too long, and everybody waves at each other from their driveways on Saturday mornings. It wasn't a glamorous life, but it was ours, and we had built it together, and I was proud of it. Our house was a beige colonial with dark green shutters and a maple tree in the front yard that turned absolutely gorgeous every October. We had a dog named Biscuit, a beagle mix we'd rescued from the Franklin County shelter when Tyler was 4. We had a vegetable garden in the backyard that I tended every summer, and Derek would come out sometimes on weekend evenings with 2 beers and just sit on the back step and watch me weed. And we'd talk about nothing in particular. And it was good. It was genuinely, simply good. Tyler was 9 and Lily had just turned 7. Tyler was obsessed with baseball and Minecraft, and had recently discovered the concept of sarcasm, which he deployed constantly and incorrectly. Lily was gentle and sharp and noticed everything. The kind of kid who remembered that her teacher had mentioned once that she liked blueberry muffins and then made her one out of a box mix for the last day of school. The kind of kid who, apparently, read bank transfer notifications off her mother's phone and filed them away. My name is Jennifer Calloway. Well, Jennifer Marsh now. I took Derek's name when we got married, which is one of the smaller things I've thought about since all of this went down. I had been teaching second grade for 9 years by this point. I loved my job. I loved my kids, the school ones, I mean, though obviously mine too. I was good at it. I had a reputation at Brookside Elementary for being the teacher parents specifically requested when they were enrolling their kids, which isn't something the district officially allows, but definitely happens anyway. I made $48,000 a year. Derek made around $72,000 at Trident, plus occasional bonuses. Between us, we were solidly, comfortably middle class. We had about $18,000 in savings, a mortgage with 7 years left on a 15-year plan, 2 car payments that were almost done, and Derek had a 401k through his company that he'd been contributing to for 6 years. We were not rich. We were not struggling. We were the family that buys the name brand cereal most weeks, but switches to store brand when the mortgage is due and car insurance renews in the same month. We had a Costco membership and used it. We took 1 vacation a year, usually somewhere drivable, like the Smoky Mountains or a lake house in Michigan. We talked about maybe going to Disney World when the kids were a little older and the savings looked a little healthier. Normal. Boring, even. I say that with complete love. Derek's sister Susan, Aunt Susan to the kids, lived in Phoenix. She was 3 years younger than Derek, 38, and she had a history of what Derek generously called being a little scattered. What that actually meant was that Susan had, in the 12 years I'd known her, borrowed money from their parents at least 4 separate times that I knew of, gone through a divorce that involved some kind of debt dispute I was never fully briefed on, and had a pattern of picking up and moving cities every few years for reasons that shifted depending on who was asking. I didn't dislike Susan. That's important to say. She was funny and warm, and the kids adored her. She sent good birthday presents, and she always called on Christmas. But she was also the kind of person whose name appearing in a financial context made my stomach do a small, involuntary clench. Derek had always been protective of her. More protective than I thought was healthy, honestly. "She's had a hard time," he would say whenever I raised an eyebrow at something. "She just needs a little support." I had learned, over the years, not to push on the Susan topic too hard. It was one of those invisible fences in a marriage. You learn where they are, and you navigate around them. Except now, there was a $5,000 wire transfer that I had not been consulted about, that had come out of our joint account, that had dropped our balance to $312.44. And I had found out about it from my 7-year-old daughter over a plate of marked down hot dogs. In the 2 weeks before that Tuesday evening, I had noticed a few small things. Nothing that had fully registered at the time. Nothing that had broken through the ordinary rhythm of lesson planning and soccer practice pickup, and remembering to defrost chicken, and all the 1,000 small tasks that make up a life. Derek had been on his phone more than usual. Not dramatically more. Not the kind of thing that would make a reasonable person suspicious. Just a little more. He'd take it with him when he went to get a glass of water. He'd flip it face down on the coffee table when I came into the room, which I'd noticed once and then told myself meant nothing, because I was the kind of person who hated drama and always gave the benefit of the doubt. He'd also been quieter at dinner. Not cold. Derek was never cold. But quieter. Somewhere in his own head. When I'd asked him if everything was okay at work, he'd smiled and said, "Yeah, just a big project, babe. Nothing to worry about." I had believed him. Because we were 11 years in, and I thought I knew the texture of his lies, and this hadn't felt like lying. It had felt like stress. I was wrong about that. The other thing, and this one I'd pushed down so hard I'd almost successfully forgotten it, was that about 3 weeks before the hot dog dinner, I'd been doing laundry and I'd found a receipt in Derek's jeans pocket. Just a gas station receipt, nothing scandalous. But it was from a BP station in Dublin, which was about 20 minutes from our house, in a direction Derek had no regular reason to go. He worked north. His gym was north. His parents were east. Dublin was west. I'd held that receipt for maybe 10 seconds, then put it on the dryer thinking I'd ask him about it, and then I'd forgotten, or made myself forget, and it had gone through the wash in the next load and dissolved into nothing. I thought about that receipt while I was doing the dishes after the hot dog dinner, listening to the kids upstairs in the bathtub, listening for Derek's car in the driveway. I heard his tires on the concrete at 6:52 p.m. I dried my hands on the dish towel. I straightened up. I looked at my own reflection in the dark kitchen window above the sink. Tired eyes, hair pulled back. A woman who had spent the last 45 minutes keeping it together for her children. I heard his key in the lock. I heard him call out, "Hey, I'm home." And I thought, okay, Derek, let's talk about Aunt Susan. He walked in smelling like the outside air and a little bit of his car's leather seats, and he was loosening his tie with one hand and scrolling his phone with the other, and he looked so completely, aggressively normal that for a second I almost wondered if I had imagined the whole thing. I hadn't. "Hey, babe," he said, not looking up from his phone. "Kids eat already?" "They did," I said. "Tyler's upstairs finishing homework. Lily's in the bath." "Good, good." He set his phone face down on the kitchen counter. There it was again, face down, and opened the refrigerator like a man with nothing on his conscience. "Anything left for me?" "There's hot dogs," I said. "Marked down ones, from Kroger." He glanced at me over the refrigerator door. Something flickered across his face. Not guilt exactly. More like a man who had just heard a sound he couldn't immediately identify. "Marked down?" "We had $12 in the grocery budget this week," I said, after the wire transfer cleared. The refrigerator door swung slowly shut. Derek straightened up. He was looking at me now, really looking at me, and I could see the exact moment his brain started calculating. "Jen." $5,000, I said, "to Susan, yesterday at 2:47 p.m. You want to tell me what that was about?" He put both hands on the counter and took a breath, and I watched him decide which version of this conversation he was going to try. I had been married to this man for 11 years. I knew every gear in that machine. It was an emergency, he said finally. She called me last week and she was in a really bad spot. She needed help with rent and she had some kind of situation with her car. Derek? My voice was very quiet. $5,000 is not rent. $5,000 is not a car repair. And $5,000 is not something you wire from our joint account without even mentioning it to me. I was going to tell you. When? He didn't answer. When were you going to tell me? I said. After the mortgage cleared? After I went to the grocery store and figured out why my card kept getting declined? Or were you just going to let me find out from our 7-year-old daughter who read the notification off my phone while I was making dinner with discount hot dogs? That landed. I saw it land. He closed his eyes for a second. Lily saw it. Lily asked me why we were eating marked down hot dogs if you'd wired Aunt Susan $5,000 yesterday, I said. Those were her exact words. She's 7, Derek. She's 7, and she's already doing the math on our household finances because something in this house doesn't add up. He came toward me then, that conciliatory move I knew so well, hands slightly out, voice dropping to something soft and reasonable. Babe, I'm sorry. I should have talked to you first. I know that. She was crying and it felt urgent and I didn't want to make a whole thing out of it. A whole thing. I took one step back. You spent the grocery money. You spent the bill money. We have $312 until your next paycheck, and our mortgage is due in 9 days. I'll move some money from savings. Don't. I held up my hand. Don't make another financial decision tonight. Don't touch anything. We are going to talk about this when the kids are asleep. He nodded. He looked chastened and tired and, I thought, genuinely sorry. And I almost let that be enough. That's the thing about 11 years. You have 1,000 small memories of the man being good, being present, being yours. And in moments of crisis, those memories line up like a jury arguing for mercy. I made him a plate of hot dogs. He ate them without complaining. We helped Tyler finish a math worksheet. We did Lily's bedtime routine. Books, songs, the glass of water she always needed after the glass of water she'd already had. We moved through the evening like two people performing a play they'd rehearsed so many times they no longer needed to think about the blocking. But when the kids were down and the house was quiet, I came back to the kitchen and I sat across from Derek at the table, and I put my phone between us with the banking app open. I need you to explain this to me, I said. All of it. Not the version where you protected Susan and you were going to tell me. The actual version. He was quiet for a long moment, and then he said something that changed everything. It's not the first time. I made him say it again. I needed to hear it again. It's not the first time, Derek said, and his voice had gone to that flat, drained register that meant he was past the point of performing. I've sent her money before. Not always this much, but a few times. How many times? Jen. How many times, Derek? He looked at the table. 4 times in the last year and a half. This was the biggest. Before this, it was usually 500, 800 once. I did the math without wanting to. 4 previous transfers, somewhere between 500 and 800 each, plus 5,000. Even at the low end, we were looking at $7,000 gone in 18 months. Money I had never seen. Money that had never appeared in any conversation, any budget discussion, any of the quarterly check-ins we did, where we sat down with the laptop and looked at our savings goals and felt quietly proud of how responsible we were being. $7,000 of that pride was a lie. Where did it come from? I asked. If the joint account still looked normal, I have a separate account, he said, a personal checking. I've had it for a few years. I moved money into it gradually, small amounts, nothing that looked weird on a statement. And when Susan needed something, I'd pull from there. This last time, it was too much, and I had to go directly from the joint account. I sat with that for a moment. A separate account, gradual transfers, a system. This was not impulsive. This was infrastructure. You built a secret account, I said, so you could send your sister money without me knowing? I knew you'd react like this. Like what, Derek? Like a person who has a right to know where her family's money is going? Like it was a bigger deal than it is. Susan needed help. Family helps family. You've always had a problem with her. Do not make this about me having a problem with Susan. My voice was shaking now. Not with tears, with something colder. I have never told you not to help your sister. I have never said one word about you being close to her. What I am telling you is that you hid money from me. You built a secret account. You siphoned off our savings in amounts small enough not to trigger a question. Derek, that is not a man protecting his sister. That is a man lying to his wife. He didn't say anything. How much is in that account right now? Jen, how much? He looked at his hands. About $800. $800. The secret account he'd maintained for years, funded through quiet little transfers that I'd never noticed, had $800 left in it. The rest of it? I didn't even know how much the rest of it was. Had gone to Susan. Or somewhere. Because I was suddenly realizing I only had his word about where it had gone. That thought arrived like a cold key turning in a lock. I didn't say it out loud. I stored it. We sat there for another hour. He explained, or tried to explain. Susan had been in serious financial trouble. A failed business venture, he said. Some debts from her divorce that had caught up with her. He'd been trying to help her get stable without making it a family drama. He hadn't told me because he knew I'd be upset and he'd wanted to handle it quietly. He kept saying the word quietly, as though the problem with lying to your wife about money was primarily that it was noisy. By the time I went upstairs to bed, I had stopped arguing. Not because I'd run out of things to say. Because I had understood something very clearly that I needed to be alone to think about. I lay in the dark next to Derek and I listened to him fall asleep. He fell asleep in about 12 minutes, which is one of the more infuriating things a person can do after an evening like that one. I stared at the ceiling for 4 hours. The next 3 days were the worst of my life in a very specific, invisible way. Nothing dramatic happened. That was almost the worst part. Derek went to work. I went to school. I taught 22 second graders how to write topic sentences, and I read them a chapter of Charlotte's Web. And I helped a little boy named Marcus tie his shoe for the 3rd time that morning because his laces kept coming undone. And the whole time I was doing all of this, I was running numbers in my head. How long had the separate account existed? If it was years, what was the total? What did we actually have? What did I actually know about our finances versus what I had assumed I knew? I went home each afternoon and I cooked dinner and I helped with homework and I watched Derek be a normal, present, attentive father. And I felt the ground shifting under me in a way that had no visible evidence. It was like finding out the foundation of your house has a crack. Everything looks fine. The walls are standing, the roof is on, but you know what you know. On the third night, I couldn't sleep again. I got up at 2 a.m. and went downstairs. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, and I started going through our bank statements. Not just the last month. I went back 18 months, the window Derek had mentioned, and I went line by line. It took me 2.5 hours. By the time I was done, my coffee had gone cold twice. The transfers to the personal account were there, once I knew to look for them. They'd been labeled as personal transfer or savings move, or once just MISC. Small enough individually that they'd never snagged my attention, but laid out in sequence with 18 months of hindsight, they added up to $11,340. Not $7,000, $11,340. I sat there in my kitchen at 4:30 in the morning with that number on my screen, and I felt something happen inside me that I can only describe as a door closing. Not dramatically, not with a slam, just a quiet, final click. I closed the laptop. I went upstairs. I lay back down next to Derek in the dark, and I thought about the receipt from the BP station in Dublin that had gone through the wash. Dublin was west of us. Derek had no reason to go west. I thought about the phone, face down on the coffee table. I thought about how he'd said quietly, over and over, like that was the whole explanation. Like privacy in a marriage was just a preference. Like keeping a secret account was just a stylistic choice. I thought about $11,340. And then, at 4:47 in the morning, my phone lit up on the nightstand with a text message. I saw it from where I was lying. The name on the screen wasn't Susan. It was a name I didn't recognize. Ashley. The message said, "Can we talk tomorrow? I don't think I can keep doing this." I stared at that screen until it went dark. My heart was beating so hard I was certain Derek would wake up. He didn't. He slept through it the way he slept through everything. Deeply, completely. Like a man with a clean conscience. I picked up the phone. I screenshot the notification. I put the phone back down. I did not sleep again that night. By 6 a.m., I had made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him. Not yet. Not until I knew exactly what I was dealing with, because I had learned something in the last 3 days. Every time I had confronted Derek without all the information, he had given me just enough truth to satisfy me while keeping the rest hidden. I had been too willing to accept partial answers. I had been too willing to believe the version of the story that let me keep my life intact. That was over. I got up. I made the kids' lunches. I drove Tyler to school and dropped Lily at her classroom and waved at our teacher like everything was fine. Then I sat in the parking lot of Brookside Elementary for 6 minutes, and I called my friend Karen. Karen Simmons had been my closest friend since our first year teaching together. She was sharp, she was loyal, and crucially, she had been through a divorce 3 years ago that had taught her things about attorneys and asset protection that she'd never wanted to know. She picked up on the second ring. "I need help," I said, "and I need you not to tell anyone. Not yet." There was a pause. When Karen spoke again, her voice had shifted into something clear and steady and focused. "Tell me everything," she said. "Start from the beginning." Karen didn't say, "Oh my God," or "I'm so sorry," or any of the things a person says when they're processing shock. She said, "Okay, what do you need first? Clarity or protection?" And that question, more than anything else in that whole terrible week, made me feel like I might actually survive this. "Both," I said, "in that order." She told me to give her 48 hours. She had a contact, a woman named Linda Voss, a family law attorney in Columbus who had handled her own divorce. Karen said Linda was the kind of lawyer who didn't panic and didn't perform. She just worked. Those 48 hours were the longest of my life. I went to school. I taught. I came home. I cooked. I watched Derek move through our house like a man who had convinced himself the worst was over. That the conversation about the wire transfer had been the whole storm, and now we were in the clearing. He was warmer than usual, actually, bringing me coffee in the morning without being asked, complimenting dinner, putting his phone in his jacket pocket instead of leaving it on the counter. Overcorrecting. I noticed all of it. I filed all of it. I said nothing. On the second night, he tried to have a real conversation with me in bed. "I know I hurt you," he said. "I know I should have been honest from the beginning. But I need you to know that everything I did because I love my family. Both of them. You and the kids and Susan. I was trying to hold everything together." "I know," I said. Which was true. I just also knew that holding everything together secretly at your wife's expense without her knowledge or consent is not love. It's control dressed up in the language of love. I knew that now in a way I hadn't known it before Karen asked me what I needed. I didn't say any of that. I said, "Get some sleep, Derek." And I lay there in the dark, listening to his breathing slow down, and I thought about Ashley. The name on the text at 4:47 in the morning. "Can we talk tomorrow? I don't think I can keep doing this." I had not confronted him about that. Not yet. I needed Linda first. I met Linda Voss on a Thursday afternoon during my prep period. Karen had arranged it. Linda's office was in a building on High Street. Clean, professional, a little generic, with a rubber plant by the window that looked like it had been watered precisely and consistently for years. Linda herself was in her mid-50s, with silver-streaked hair and reading glasses she kept taking on and off. She looked like the kind of woman who had heard every version of every story and still paid attention to yours. I laid it out for her, all of it. The wire transfer, the secret account, the $11,340, the text from Ashley. Linda listened without interrupting. When I finished, she put her glasses back on and looked at me. "Before we talk about options," she said, "I want to ask you one question. Do you want to save the marriage, or do you want to protect yourself?" "Right now," I said, "I want to know what I'm actually dealing with. The rest I can figure out after." She nodded like that was the right answer. "Then here's what we do." She explained it clearly. In Ohio, all assets accumulated during the marriage are marital property. The secret account was marital property, regardless of whose name was on it. The 401k was marital property. The equity in the house was marital property. The $11,000 he had moved out of our joint account without my consent was potentially financial misconduct, and in a divorce proceeding, that mattered. It didn't matter that it had gone to his sister. That was his characterization, and she only had his word for it. "His word," I said slowly, "because I don't actually know for certain where the money went." Linda looked at me steadily. "No," she said, "you don't." We talked for an hour. By the time I left, I had a list of things to do, none of which involved telling Derek anything. I needed copies of every financial document I could access: bank statements, the 401k summary, the mortgage statement, both car loans, anything with a number on it. I needed to document the text from Ashley, which I had already screenshot. And I needed, Linda said, to pay attention to patterns without tipping my hand. "You've already been doing that," she said, almost approvingly. "Don't stop." I drove back to school and taught my afternoon classes, and I felt for the first time in a week like the ground under me was solid again. Not because anything was fixed, because I had a direction. The Dublin question got answered 11 days later, and not by me. Tyler had a baseball game on a Saturday morning, the last one of the season, and Derek had promised him he'd be there. He was there. We all were. The four of us in lawn chairs along the third base line with Biscuit on a leash and a bag of sunflower seeds. And it looked exactly like the life we'd built together was supposed to look. Tyler hit a double in the fourth inning, and Derek was on his feet hollering, and Lily grabbed my arm and said, "Mom, Tyler's so fast." And I thought, this is real. This part is real. Whatever else is happening, this is real. After the game, Tyler went with some teammates to get pizza, and Derek took Lily to the car to get her jacket because the wind had picked up. I was folding up the lawn chairs when a woman I didn't recognize came up to me. She was about my age, maybe a few years younger. Dark hair, a green jacket. She looked like she hadn't slept well in a while. "Are you Jennifer Marsh?" she said. "I am," I said. She pressed her lips together. "My name is Ashley Donnell," she said. "I think we need to talk." I set the lawn chair down very carefully. My heart was beating in a way I could feel in my throat. "Okay," I said. She talked fast, like she'd rehearsed it. She and Derek had been seeing each other for 8 months. She had met him at a work event. He'd done some logistics consulting for a company she worked for in Dublin. She hadn't known he was married, she said. And when I looked at her face, I believed her. Not completely, not without question, but enough. She'd found out 3 months ago. She'd been trying to end it ever since, and Derek had been, her word, persistent. "The text," I said, "from 2 weeks ago. I don't think I can keep doing this." "He called me 4 times after that," she said. "He said he was going to leave his wife. He said you two were already separated." She looked at me directly. "You're not separated." "No," I said. "We are not." She handed me her phone. She had texts, months of them. She had a photo of a receipt from a restaurant in Dublin, A dinner for two dated 2 months ago. She had his number saved in her contacts as Derek M., which was a small, pathetic detail that for some reason hit me harder than anything else. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know that doesn't help, but I thought you should know." Derek came around the side of the car with Lily on his back, both of them laughing. He saw Ashley and me standing together and he stopped. From 30 feet away, I watched the color leave his face. "Jen," he started. "Take Lily to the car," I said. My voice was so calm, it scared me. "Jen, let me—" "Derek." I looked at him. "Take Lily to the car." He did. Ashley gave me her number. I thanked her, and I meant it, and she left. And then I stood there, alone, on a baseball field in the October wind, and I let the truth settle into me like water into dry ground. All of it at once. The 8 months, the Dublin receipt, the 4 times he'd called her after she'd tried to leave. He said he was going to leave his wife. The secret account, the $11,000. The word quietly said over and over like it explained anything. I drove home. Derek followed in his car. The kids were in my car, and they could feel the silence, and Tyler, my 9-year-old with his new sarcasm and his baseball cleats still on, said, "Mom, are you okay?" And I said, "I'm okay, bud. I'm working something out," which was the most honest thing I'd said in 2 weeks. When we got home, I sent the kids upstairs. Tyler took Lily. I don't know what he said to her, but she went without argument, which was unlike her. Maybe she could feel it too. Derek stood in the kitchen. He didn't even try to start. He just stood there. 8 months, I said. "Jen, she told me she didn't know you were married. She told me you told her we were already separated." I watched his face. "She also told me you called her 4 times after she tried to end it. 4 times, Derek, to tell her you were going to leave me." "I was confused," he said. "I was in a bad place. I wasn't going to actually—" "Stop." I held up my hand. "I don't want the version of this where you were confused. I am done accepting partial versions." I pulled out my phone. I had everything saved. The screenshots, the photo of the restaurant receipt that Ashley had texted me while I was standing in the parking lot, the banking statements I'd been quietly printing at the library for 2 weeks. I set the phone on the counter between us. "I've already spoken to a family law attorney. Her name is Linda Voss. She's very good." Derek stared at the phone, then at me. "You went to a lawyer?" "2 weeks ago." Something went through his face that I recognized. It was the moment a person realizes the conversation they thought they were walking into is not the conversation they're actually in. He had thought we were going to fight. He had thought there would be crying and accusations and the whole exhausting theater of betrayal. And somewhere at the end of it, he would say the right things, and I would, eventually, as I always had, give him room to work his way back. But I wasn't fighting. I was finished. "I want you to go stay with your parents this week," I said. "I want you to tell them why you're there. Or don't. That's your business. But I need you out of this house while I figure out the next steps. The kids will stay here. You can see them whenever you want. I'm not going to do this to them. But you can't stay here." "Jen," his voice cracked. "I love you. I love this family. I know I destroyed everything. I know that. But please don't—" "I know you love this family," I said. "I believe that." I also know that you built a secret financial account, moved $11,000 through it over 18 months without telling me, wired $5,000 more from our joint account without asking, had an affair for 8 months, told another woman we were already separated, and slept next to me through all of it, like a man with a clean conscience. I looked at him steadily. Which part of that was love, Derek? Tell me which part I'm supposed to hold on to. He didn't have an answer for that. There wasn't one. He left that night. His parents lived 40 minutes east of us. I didn't know what he told them. His mother, Sandra, called me 2 days later, and I let it go to voicemail, and I never called her back. The divorce took 7 months. Linda Voss was everything Karen had promised. The secret account, once Derek's attorney tried to characterize it as personal spending money, became a significant point of contention. Financial misconduct during marriage is taken seriously in Ohio, and the fact that Derek had systematically moved money out of the joint account without my knowledge mattered. We didn't have to go to trial. His attorney eventually advised him to settle, and he did. I kept the house. We refinanced it into my name alone. Derek's 401k was split. I got 38% of it, which came out to a little over $19,000. Money I put into an account in my name alone the day the paperwork cleared. The equity in the house was factored into the settlement. I got full legal custody of the kids, with Derek having regular visitation every other weekend and one weeknight, plus alternating holidays. He agreed without a fight, which told me something about his guilt that no conversation ever had. The $11,340 was addressed in the settlement as a marital asset that had been dissipated. I didn't get it back as cash. It doesn't work that cleanly, but it was factored into the overall division in a way that favored me. Linda had done her job. Susan called me once, about 4 months after Derek moved out. She wanted to explain, she said. She wanted me to know that she hadn't known what was happening between Derek and me, that she'd taken the money because she'd needed it, not because she was trying to hurt anyone. I know, Susan, I said. I know you needed it. But Derek should have asked me. He should have told me. What happened to us isn't your fault. It's his. I paused. I hope things get better for you. I really do. She started crying. I waited until she was done, and then I said goodbye, and I hung up, and I felt nothing except tired. It's been 14 months since that Tuesday with the hot dogs. Tyler is 10 now and has gotten genuinely funny. His sarcasm has started landing correctly, which is both delightful and slightly alarming. Lily is 8 and still notices everything. Last month, she told me, out of nowhere, that she thought our house felt more like itself lately. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just hugged her, and she hugged me back, and Biscuit pushed his nose into the middle of it because that's what Biscuit does. I'm still at Brookside Elementary. I'm still teaching 2nd grade. I got a small raise this year. I'm at $51,000 now. And Karen and I started doing a Saturday morning walk every week, just the two of us, that has become one of the things I look forward to most. I am not dating. I'm not interested in dating. I am interested in learning, slowly and deliberately, what my life looks like when it belongs entirely to me. Derek and I manage. We are civil, for the kids. He's renting an apartment in Westerville, close enough that the custody schedule works without anyone spending their life in a car. He seems quieter than he used to be. I don't know what happened with Ashley, and I don't ask. What I know is this. Lily asked me a question over a plate of marked down hot dogs, and I had a choice in that moment about what to do with the answer. I could have kept the peace. I could have accepted the partial version. I could have decided that what I didn't fully know wasn't worth the cost of finding out. Instead, I sat across from my husband at the kitchen table with my phone between us, and I said, I need you to explain this to me. All of it. The actual version. That was the moment. Everything after that was just following through. My name is Jennifer Marsh. I still haven't changed it back. I've been thinking about it, and I think I will, but I'm in no rush. I've learned not to make big decisions in a hurry. I've learned to wait until I know exactly what I'm dealing with before I act. It turns out that's a pretty good way to live.